AI is reshaping every category of software. We're particularly excited about a new ecosystem of startups that are shaking up some of the most entrenched categories of business-critical software that have often been regarded as impossible to replace. These are the companies that will take us from legacy systems of record to AI systems of action. I'm Mike Droesch, partner at Bessemer Venture Partners.
And I'm Darsh Patel, an investor here at Bessemer. And in this series, we're pulling back the curtain on our internal road mapping process as we speak to founders of the startups making this happen. We're candidly still learning and debating how this market will evolve as we build out our thesis, and we're excited to share that process with you. This is Systems of Action.
Today's guest is Wiley Jones, co-founder and CEO of Darsh. Wiley is an engineer whose work took him from experimenting with detonations at the University of Illinois to manufacturing everything from security cameras to pet toys in China. His experience in manufacturing inspired him and his co-founders to reimagine the enterprise resource planning category with their company, Darsh. Now he's taking on the biggest players in the industry. Wiley, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks. It's really fun.
Let's start there with a little bit of the founding story. Talk us through how your experience as an engineer in manufacturing actually brought you to be so fed up with the ERP that you decided you had to do something to change it.
There's like layers, obviously, to all this. I grew up in Illinois, and my dad worked he still does, as a mechanical engineer. And so I grew up thinking, it's like, okay, engineers make physical stuff, you make things. He worked on like the Mitsubishi Lancer and the Mitsubishi Eclipse, and like he worked on automotive parts, as a mechanical engineer in the supplier ecosystem. I think I was probably like 10 years old, and I didn't know what this meant at the time, but he would complain about like their ERP systems. He was a manufacturing engineer, right? And then it's like, I don't know if I internalized it back then. Growing up in a household where, he was always steering us towards making things, always towards building things. There was always this like other component of it, which is that there's an entire information economy and an information infrastructure in addition to the physical infrastructure of what gets done, what gets made, and how it gets made. I just remember him complaining when I was like probably 10 years old about JD Edwards and how they were paying millions of dollars for a system that wasn't working, and the accounting team couldn't get the costing information right. That kind of first layer was, clearly like a substrate for me. The second layers of it was that immediately out of school, I basically was thrust into I would describe as the global value chain and the bowels of it. And I lived in China for probably about 18 months over a 3-year period, working in a factory, working with contract manufacturers, working with battery manufacturers, gearbox vendors, plastic injection molding, PCBs, the whole thing to make this like robot pet toy. We were a really small company. There were 7 of us, or like 8 of us. And it was a great product and a bad business, which was like also just kind of a good learning for me. It's like when you build something amazing and super fun, and you're like, oh, there's actually commercially, like, it's just not viable. No one wants this. We would be making these things. And we were in a factory that was also owned and operated by the same people who made Roombas. The parent company, iRobot, had used a contract manufacturer. This contract manufacturer is really interesting because they started as a toy company or toy contract manufacturer. You guys know Jenga. Originally they were contracted in the 1990s, I think, to be the Jenga manufacturer and the Jenga factory. And this is in Guangdong in like southern China. And iRobot had a massive, fully automated system at this place. And we were like tucked in the corner of this factory. iRobot was producing 1 million Roombas a year. And I think the like first moment where it really clicked for me that there was a big unsolved problem was when I was on that line working on our material planning for our production runs. And like literally next to me was a iRobot engineer who was doing the same thing as me, having the same conversations with the project manager at the factory about material planning. And they were like, oh, our material plan doesn't run until Wednesdays. I'm like, I don't know what that means. I was like, I don't know why it doesn't run until Wednesdays. Like, walk me through this. And we're, debugging. And then I just realized like, oh, there's like a cron job that runs on their homegrown ERP that runs every Wednesday. It spits out this big report of all the material and all the inventory, and it sends it out to everybody. And no one in their factory like knows what that's doing. And we're, a peon. We're making, I think we're making like 40,000 units a year of this like robot pet toy. And iRobot was making 1 million Roombas a year. And I'm sitting here doing the same thing as this guy at iRobot. And I was like, okay, that shouldn't work that way, correct? I was like, there's something broken, fundamentally broken here. And I think that was, that experience being there, seeing the sheer amount of effort that's required to make something in the physical world manifest in like the information infrastructure, it made me realize there's just a ton of unsolved problems still. Years after that, going into other companies, it just became really clear that there was this overarching broad pattern, which is that companies had to modify their business process and what their physical process was in order to match the greatest common denominator of software applications. And the end business users, me being at the the periphery of these enterprise systems, I was like, we don't want to modify our business process. We want to modify the applications. I was like, why can't we just turn that, flip that around? Like, let's modify it.
Run it on Tuesday.
Yeah. I was like, why can't we run it right now? We need it. He needs it, and so that was like the main conclusion. Let's just make software that's really easy for end business users to restructure around what you actually do. The way we talk about this with the company is don't build your operations for software. DOS is software built for operations, right? It's like, just this classic inversion. And it turns out that there's nothing profound or novel about that's existed for a long time. It's called, customization and large, massive ERP implementations. People do this. They customize these things through their teeth. And that takes a long time though, because it requires that you take the semantics of your business and you translate it and compile it into the syntax of whatever those applications are. You have to go and change people's behaviors. You change the systems and you test them, and you get, very large ERP implementations. And so that's what led us to go work on this problem.
There are a lot of easier markets you could have tried to go after. So what was also part of the inspiration for there's a why now moment that we think it's possible now to build a better ERP?
AI is allowing people to take what have been human jobs and break them apart into machine jobs the same way the Industrial Revolution did for physical work. We're doing the same thing for knowledge work right now. And I think it's basically 2/3 of the TCO for most ERP implementations and services. And we think there's a world where a very large amount of that gets compressed down and the costs get passed on to customers as a benefit and also a better experience. And this is just the story each time is the total cost of ownership is dropping. If we can build systems that can be configured by machines, then we can enable this massive shift in the platforms that allows people to go in and drive their business to value way faster without human intervention.
You might be one of the only AI software companies that doesn't advertise AI anywhere on the website. So I assume that's a conscious decision, but we'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, we don't advertise it. Well, I'll kind of go two ways. It's like, let's say the Arthur C. Clarke, right? So, the technology is indistinguishable from magic, right? I think there's a part of what we do, which is that we have to defy people's expectations of these systems, which means you have to show them this magical thing almost right in front of their face for them to be able to believe you. We get into discussions with customers where they're like, we don't think you can actually do it that fast. And we're like, well, let's just look at how this thing works. And we're describing to you what your business process is. And we're rebuilding aspects of the application in front of you in real time. What do you think of what we just showed you? And they're like, well, that would have cost me $10,000 to $40,000 with this consulting firm that we're talking to. How did you go do that? And our explanation to them is it's actually not that complicated. It's basically we took things that normally people are going and configuring and mapping. We pushed it to the application layer. We made it so that you don't have to go do that. Instead, it's basically a Terraform-like schema generator that machines can go in and interpret and query. And it's almost like running OpenAI's deep research on top of our system, and it compiles itself. The reason that we don't advertise AI is because our end users don't care about that.
Right.
They just don't care. They're like, these are operations professionals, these are finance professionals. They're like, I just want my order to cash workflow.
Yeah.
I just want, I want our business to be able to take these 5 retail channels and these e-commerce channels and these wholesale channels, consolidate them down, run a demand plan, execute that into production. I don't care where the AI is. It doesn't matter to me. We want a deterministic output for our business given deterministic inputs. And using AI to configure that is powerful for time to value, but it's not the feature itself. It's the thing that enables value for the customers. So we find it best not to talk about it.
I'm going a little off script here because I think the way you built the organization, especially the go-to-market organization, is part of a unique value prop. You're very notorious for your extremely funny JDs and come cook with that.
Yeah.
All the buzz of it to get everyone really excited and amped up to go. deploy ERPs. Talk to us a little bit about that motion, that back and forth with the customer, that operationalization of their business processes and that manifestation in DOS. Talk to us about the PMOs and all the different roles you've built to make that happen and make that magic moment come to the surface for your customer.
The very first person we hired to do that job, he's been doing it now for 9 months. And prior to that, it was just me doing it. And we're like, oh, PMO is a feature, not a bug, is the, the joke of that.
What does it stand for?
It stands for Program Management Office, which is what normally it's used for. We're just using it as a placeholder word. We literally were debating this today. We're like, should we change it? And I'm like, no, don't change it. It's like, because it doesn't mean anything. And so because it doesn't mean anything, it allows us to give it meaning, as opposed to like, if you call these people product managers, then like people like, you get people who come in from like a big tech PM job and they're like, I want to be a product manager. You're like, no, that's not what this job is, right? Like it allows us to have this like complete blank slate and carve out our own meaning for things. But to your question, Darsh, the thing that we have decided to do differently is to play both sides of this game, which is we are an ERP, but also we are not an ERP. And that's like that's the funny thing about the anti-ERP club thing that we had done and the kind of community we're building around that is that humor is all about telling the truth in a way that's refreshing. And that's what's fun about it, is that we get to take the best parts of ERP and own those, and then take the hardest, worst, most awful customer experiences of ERP and find ways to disassociate and to build our business so that those are not artifacts of the company and not artifacts of the product. And examples of this being that like pre-sale people in our company are account executives and the people who do post-sales. And so a lot of times we'll be in a system, where we're talking with customers, they're walking through their system design, and these people are like, this is all great, but like, who's actually doing the implementation? And our PMO, in this case, the person who does post-sales, they're like, it's me. That's you're talking to them. And they're like, oh, great. So when this doesn't work, I'm talking to you. And you're like, yeah, but that's why I'm like, it's going to work because I'm actually telling you here, this is what we're designing. We're going to go do this. And I think that the fact that a lot of ERP companies don't do that, it's intentional. And it's because the people joke with like Oracle and SAP, you'll hear a lot of tech companies, tech software people, they're like, what do those companies even do? And the answer is they do everything. They are protecting themselves as an organization by being this like faceless thing. And the people who really get a lot of value in like the mid-market segment where we focus, they want a partner, and totally makes sense that you can go to Accenture and buy like a massive Oracle implementation for billions of dollars. Like the world needs that. But also what we're doing today, the world needs some of. And so that's where we're focusing, and being that partner and having that direct human-to-human relationship with them, with our customers. The organization is designed around that.
It's probably a perfect lead into like, who is the ideal customer for DOS today? And then maybe we talk about a little bit about like greenfield deployments versus actually doing some of the migrations that the industry is known for.
We sell to physical operations companies because they are the most underserved. They also don't have the types of people working in them who want to go solve these problems themselves, because they want to go solve problems for their business. It's like the Bezosism, like, if it makes your beer taste better, go work on it, right? And these are literally beer companies, or so like it's not like it's not a misused analogy because it makes the peanut butter. Yeah, it's the peanut butter company. Yeah, the peanut butter company is like, I don't care about tracking ABC inside of our systems. Like they're like, we need to go sell more peanut butter, right? And we need to go make more peanut butter. We need to go buy almonds, whatever. So, that's why we target physical operations companies like day one. And it's also my own personal bias is like, that's what I did. And so we understand that ecosystem. Relatively small, like we call it mid-market. Oracle would call it SMB, right? It's like everyone's SMB is different. Companies that are doing between like 5 and 200 million top line, it's a good sweet spot for us because they have hard, painful problems, probably not been solved yet, growing usually. There's also like a personal component of it too, like a human capital component of it is like the owners and operators in these businesses have to want to win in their market. If they don't want to win, if they're like, I'm kind of coasting and like, I'm going to go buy my boat after we like sunset this business, we probably shouldn't work with them because they don't have the drive to change their company. And so if we find people that are in that position and they have a relatively complex value chain where they're doing more than one of something, more than one supplier, they have more than one warehouse, they're managing factories, they're managing multiple brands, they're selling a bunch of, across a bunch of sales channels. It's a really good sweet spot for us as a business to partner with them.
We are certainly, Darsh and I at least, are big believers in this opportunity. There will be a whole new wave of these AI native ERPs. But frankly, like when we talk to our partners about it internally and we, present our thesis, we get a lot of like strange looks of folks saying, "You sure? That sounds really hard." People have tried reinventing these categories in the past, and it's just typically been thought of as like, these systems are impossible to rip and replace. They have huge existing moats around the services implementation. And so like the way we think about it is you kind of need some combination of either the new products are 10x better, so there's like real incentive for a customer to switch, and or you can ideally make the cost and the pain to switch, 10x lower. And so I don't know how you think about, particularly as you go from greenfield to more brownfield deployments, where you're pulling out existing ERPs, like what is the biggest pull and incentive for customers? And, it's both the adaptability of your product, making the transition dramatically easier.
If you build a platform first and you focus applications in it down to this like extremely sharp wedge, and you find that thing that's pulling you into the market, you can drive it into companies through the moat. It's less that it's a moat, and it's actually more that it's armor. And what we're trying to do is break a piece out of it and put a new piece into it. If you're getting pulled into a market in a segment, which we have is really like, obviously on the order management side and on like the demand planning side and everything that's downstream of new business, recurring business and all the operations that have to come from that. If we can focus our platform there and drive it into the market through that entry point, it's kind of like an armor piercing round where then the rest of the platform can come with it. What we find a lot of companies do, and where like point solutions fail, it's point. It's a point, right? They drive that point in, but the problem is that there's no thrust of the spear behind it. There's no platform that they can come in with, because then, a very large incumbent will be like, oh, this is a really cool procurement solution, but do you have a platform that it can connect into for ABC outside of the system? How does it connect into finance and accounting? Oh, well, it can't do that. Okay, I'm shutting that off because our Oracle system can do that, right? And that's I would say the cardinal sin that people have tried in these intermediate points between the platform shifts is like, let's drive a point solution in, let's drive a point solution in. And eventually they all get ripped out, or they get, they become smaller and smaller parts of the TCO of what this company's spending. If you have a platform that provides the mass and the inertia to drive behind this point solution that is the entry point into their business, then it is real land and expand. And we think that over like a 5 to 10 year period, if we continue to invest in building a truly enterprise platform, the same way that Oracle, SAP, NetSuite, Epicor, PeopleSoft, all these businesses, Workday is a great example, all these businesses did before, then we will have that real opportunity with our time to value sale to say, look, we are going to beat them with a better product that's faster to implement. And we have a wedge already into your business with this thing that we built that's amazing. You've worked with us as a partner. It's great. Let's try this. And I think that's the real sale as we go up market.
Thing we're constantly still astounded by is like the engineering and product velocity. Building a general ledger from the ground up is not a trivial problem, right? And you guys have done it incredibly quick. And the scary thing for me, and maybe scary for you too, is like, it's like the dot trend. You have to keep like churning out modules to ensure that you do have the mass behind that initial wedge when you do start doing these brownfield implementations. How are you doing? Like, obviously 10x engineers, culture, that's great from top down, but talk us through that.
There's this really awesome paper that I think like a high school sports coach gave to our team at some point. It's called The Mundanity of Excellence. If you've ever heard of it, it's like a thing from the 1980s. And what they talk about is that like, if you want qualitatively different results, you have to do qualitatively different things. And it's like, that's okay, obvious. But also like, I think people don't internalize that and everything. If you look at like the best Olympic athletes, they are all like slightly better than one another, but they're qualitatively different than like the average person. And like, I could put in as many hours as Kipchoge, the world's best runner, and I will never, ever, ever get close, right? So it's not about quantitative inputs. It's like, to do things better, you do them qualitatively differently. And our qualitatively different approach is, instead of building the end feature, we build the underlying abstraction by taking the numbers and patterns that we see from customers and backing them out into the general purpose thing. The common example I like to give is customers will be like, we want sales forecasting, we want inventory reporting, we want finance and accounting reporting, we want to generate core financials. We're like, oh, you want enterprise grade pivot tables. and you want to like tweak the formatting and the flavor of them to meet your expectations of reality. Because we go and show an accountant just a generic pivot table, they're like, oh, that's not a GL. They're like, that's not my P&L. Right. I'm like, okay, but like, if we made these columns look like this, now they're like, oh, that's a P&L, right? And you're like, okay, so let's build a pivot table and make it so that it can feel like a P&L. Let's build a pivot table that can feel like a sales forecast. And then you only have to build one thing instead of building N things. And if you repeat that process, these things compound over time. And this is what like programmers do. It's just that people don't build like applications that way most of the time. It just means that you also take on harder problems earlier in the company's journey, and it takes longer to do stuff, and you don't get that like instant gratification of like, like cursoring your way through a feature and you're like, oh, tab, okay, cool, it's shipped, done, next thing, right? Instead we have to sit down and be like, all right, what actually is the ontology of the most perfect abstraction for a DOS table, for a DOS form? It's an intellectually stimulating, rigorous exercise that requires going and looking at real customer use cases and trying to back them out into their essence.
I think this well describes a lot of the magic that you guys have. It's like all the iceberg below the surface, all this stuff you built that's not immediately apparent in the application. Maybe we could talk through like just a real customer example of like, what is a workflow that somebody's setting up, and like, what's an example of how the adaptability of the platform that you have and these underlying abstractions make it much easier, faster to implement versus a rigid system.
Yeah. One of our very first customers is a coffee company. And I remember implementing this thing for them when it was just me doing the implementation that still to this day is in use for them because it's so useful, where they'll basically say, I want to issue an invoice, and it'll auto draft. This will have all been automatically drafted for them based on a purchase order that gets closed out. Depending on which of their customers they're sending this to, it'll generate different types of documents. It'll send it via different mechanisms. They basically have like these wholesale customers, they have these commerce customers, they have these retail customers, and they sell their products into a handful of retailers where they have to send very specific file formats with very specific mappings, very specific pre-negotiated prices. Instead of having to run each of those one-off processes, they just click issue, and our system will fan out and do the correct one. And it's just basic deterministic logic, but it's like, in order to do that, we had to build a composable database basically for them. We had to build a workflow editor for them. We had to build a form builder for them. We had to build a file generator with all these mappings between those systems. And so like you have like 4 really complex abstractions necessary for this like one magical moment, which is they say, hey, we have a new customer we brought on board. They have a new file type that they need us to do. Can you add it? And it takes us 30 minutes. But that is only possible because we have built a bunch of abstractions to support that.
Really impressive. Well, I want to make sure in the last few minutes here we cover a couple of the last questions we had. So I mean, first to start with the big one, like DOS in 10 years. Like talk us through the vision, where you guys feel like you're going to be at that point. Where do you see the company going long term?
I get like overly excited about it, right? It's hard for me to contain that excitement without it coming off as borderline crazy evangelical, hubris. Like, I don't know how to describe it, but I think it's like, if we like being intellectually rigorous, it's a massive opportunity. It's maybe the biggest software market. I think it might actually be the biggest. This is the 53rd anniversary of SAP. Like literally every possible tailwind, like there's a generational like group of people who were trained up on these systems. Those people are retiring. And last time I checked, people are not like sharpening up their skills to go get really good at implementing these systems. I don't know that many people who are like, I'm going to go build a career in SAP implementation. I'm going to like, every single tailwind is pushing people out of this, I would say, large ecosystem, and people are ready for something different, which is faster value, a system that models around their needs. We have an enabling technology that seems to be compounding at rates that no other technology has compounded before, which is generative AI. And all of these things are making it for like this massive, focused moment that I think someone is going to go execute on, and we want it to be us.
But how does this shake out? Do you win? Do you your own quarter?
You want to win. The most fun version of it is to do all of it. Like, I think that's the most appealing way to like spend time, is building the most articulate expression of what's possible. And for me and for the company, it's let's build a system of record that can support the next generation of businesses, a system of record that can unlock agility for today's largest and biggest and best companies that feel trapped by what the systems they have currently can do. Let's build a platform that allows people to build on top of it the same way that I would want to build on top of the best developer experiences that are possible today in cloud services. Let's build a commerce network that makes it easier and easier for our customers to trade with their partners. Those are all things that are possible. And I think being naive enough to go try to do them is like a good starting point, and wise enough to know that it's a long and extremely exciting journey that we have to recruit and get other extremely, I'd say, naive people to join in on.
In many ways, like what you're doing is it's like one giant love letter to entrepreneurs, businesses.
Yeah.
I think it's really beautiful in that sense.
That's why I wake up super excited every day. It's very selfish, but like, I love selling our products. I love talking to customers because you get to be a part of people building like their life's work and like their thing. The founders of all the companies we work with, it hurts me deeply when we can't like solve their problems because I know what they're doing is like important to them, and we get to be a material part of helping them win in the market. And it's the coolest thing ever to learn about a wall manufacturing company or a cosmetics manufacturer, or we talked to this chemicals, biosynthesis company recently. These guys literally have spent their PhDs and everything they've done since they were 19 years old is in service of building this company. And they're like, can we go use DOS to do this? And it would help us so that we can focus on like actually doing protein synthesis, or I don't even know exactly what it is. And I'm like, cool, like you guys can go do that, and we will help you with all the stuff you don't want to do, right? And that's what gets me super excited, is we get to just help people with their life's work.
Well, I love the way you framed like this is one of the largest software markets on earth, and I guess drew up all these systems of record categories that we're excited about. And the pain is still very real. While there are incumbents, like there are lots of unsolved problems here. And so that's certainly what's gotten us excited about not just ERP, but the potential why now moment in all of these big legacy software categories. And so maybe in closing, just curious if you have any advice. Obviously, you're still early in your journey, but any advice for other founders that are trying to do something similar in some of these other categories where they're trying to, everyone's told them that this is an impossible task to replace the existing incumbents, and yet they're still trying to build a better system of record in CRM, ITSM, pick your category.
I think the simple answer is like, it's the job of the founder is to do this really hard thing, which is you're deeply skeptical of your own ideas and you're extremely high conviction in your own ideas. And like every day it's this like intrinsic this internal, deeply intrinsic battle where you're like, I think I'm wrong and stupid. And also I think I'm a genius. And you flip back and forth between the two of them. Just like spending time learning to just be comfortable with that, and not losing sight of the big picture of what you're trying to do. Cause I think that's where like having a co-founder like is just, just depends on the person and depends on who you are. For me, my co-founder and I, we have the same arguments every single time that we do anything. And we're basically the same person, but like inverted. And, I think about the long term all the time. He thinks about the short term all the time. And it's this perfect harmony. And that is how we have solved that intrinsic battle. And like, you have to figure out what that means for you as a company. And maybe you don't have that intrinsic battle because you're like, you have this very clear quantifiable thing, right? Like if you're building a certain kind of point solution where you have like slam dunk ROI, and you can be like, we're selling $1 for 97 cents. Like, cool. Like you can go and rip that into the market and feel really high conviction about it.
Right.
But if you're building like in a big ambiguous open-ended thing that like you have to think about what does this look like in 10 years, you're going to have to struggle with that. And so you need to find either inside of yourself or inside of people in your team or inside of mentors or peers or your family or your friends or whatever, something that like keeps you into, shape when you get ping-ponged by it.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to wrap. We continue to be huge fans of what you're doing, and we at least are believers that, this is hopefully the next era ERP. So super grateful for you spending time with us.
Thanks, guys.